The night the silver ring slipped off my finger, the hallway lights flickered, and I heard a faint thud behind the door. I stared at the empty space where the band had been, feeling the cold metal bite my skin, even though it was gone. A voice whispered from the stairwell, "You shouldn't have taken it." My heart hammered, and the question rose like a tide. I turned, but the hallway was empty, only the echo of my own breath answering me. The ring lay on the floor, glinting in the dim glow, and I wondered who had placed it there. I had been 35 for 3 years, living in a tidy apartment above a coffee shop that never truly closed. My days were a rhythm of early meetings, late emails, and the occasional weekend hike that kept my mind from drifting. My partner Maya worked as a graphic designer, and we shared a small balcony where we grew basil and talked about future plans, travel, kids, maybe buying a house. The night we celebrated our 3rd anniversary, we laughed over cheap wine and a playlist of old jazz records. Our friends were a steady circle: Jenna, who always called at midnight with "just a quick question," and Mark, who loved to drop by with fresh bagels on Sunday mornings. They trusted us. We trusted them. The ring was a family heirloom, a silver band my mother had given me on my 21st birthday, a promise that someday I would pass it on. It never left my finger, except for the day it slipped. I remembered the exact moment. I was reaching for a glass of water in the kitchen, the faucet humming, the tiles cool under my feet. My thumb brushed the band and a sudden flicker of pain shot through my palm. A faint ache grew in my wrist, and I dismissed it as a muscle cramp, not noticing the ring's edge catch on the edge of the countertop. When I finally looked down, the band was gone, and a thin line of silver lay on the linoleum like a broken promise. I tried to call Maya, but the phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You know what you've lost." My breath caught, and I wondered if it was a prank, a warning, or something else entirely. That night, I lay awake, the ceiling fan turning lazily, hearing the distant hum of the street, and the ring's absence gnawed at me like a secret. The first shift came a week later, when I walked past the laundromat on 5th Street and saw a man in a worn leather jacket staring at the sidewalk. He lifted his hand, revealing a scar that traced his knuckles, and his eyes lingered on the spot where I had dropped the ring. I felt a shiver run down my spine, as if the air itself had thickened. "Did you find it?" he asked, his voice low, almost reverent. I answered a vague no, and the word felt like a lie. Later that evening, Maya noticed my distracted stare and asked why I seemed so distant. I brushed it off, saying the work deadline was consuming me, but the unease lingered like a scent I couldn't place. The next day, a delivery arrived, an envelope with no return address, containing a single photograph of a silver ring glinting against a dark background. The back was scrawled, "It belongs to someone who knows its weight." My pulse quickened. Who had taken the picture, and why were they sending it to me? I tried to trace the envelope's origin, but the postmark was smudged, the paper cheap. The only clue was a faint oil stain that smelled faintly of incense. That night, while the city slept, I heard a soft knock on my door. I opened it to find a woman in a raincoat, her hair dripping, eyes darting behind the hallway. She whispered, "You can't keep it hidden forever," and slipped a folded note into my hand before disappearing into the hallway's darkness. The note read, "Meet me at the old pier at midnight. Bring the ring." My mind raced. What would I find there? And who was she? I stared at the note, the ink smudging under my trembling fingers, and wondered if I should obey or run. The escalation spiraled quickly. I met the woman, who introduced herself only as Lena, at the pier where the water lapped against rusted pilings and the moon cast thin silver ribbons across the surface. She held a small box, its lid half open, revealing a faint glow. "Your mother's ring," she said, "was never yours to keep." The words cut through the night air like a blade. I felt my throat tighten and a memory surfaced. My mother's sudden death, the coldness in her eyes when she handed me the band. Lena pressed a folded piece of paper into my palm. It was a handwritten ledger, names and dates, each entry marked with a tiny tick. My heart hammered as I recognized one name, Jenna, 2021-2023. I remembered Jenna's late-night calls, the way she would ask for small favors. Did she know about the ring? The next morning, Maya found a fresh coffee mug on the kitchen counter, its interior etched with a tiny symbol, a crescent moon and a broken circle. She laughed it off. but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Later, on my way home, I caught sight of Mark's bike parked outside the laundromat, his shirt torn at the sleeve, as if he'd rushed. I followed him, but he slipped into an alley and vanished. I pressed my ear against the door of a closed shop and heard muffled voices. "The ring is a key. It opens more than a lock." The words echoed in my mind, and I felt a cold sweat bead on my forehead. Back in my apartment, the phone buzzed again. This time, the text was simple. "You know what you have to do." No signature, just a single line that made my stomach churn. I stared at the ring, still lying on my kitchen table, and wondered if the metal itself could feel the weight of all these secrets. A sudden knock at my door jolted me. I opened it to find a delivery man holding a small, sealed envelope addressed to the keeper of the silver. Inside was a single key, tarnished, with a note that read, "It's the only way out." My hands trembled as I held the key, and the question rose, what would I unlock? That night, I dreamed of a dark hallway lined with doors, each one bearing a name I recognized: Jenna, Mark, Maya. I woke up gasping, the ring's absence echoing like a hollow drum. The point of no return arrived on a rain-soaked Thursday. I had been walking home from work, the city's neon lights reflecting on puddles, when a black sedan screeched to a halt beside me. Two men in dark suits stepped out. One said, "We need the ring. It's not yours to keep." I felt my throat close, and the world narrowed to the sound of my own heartbeat. I tried to run, but the rain-slick streets I tripped, and the ring rolled out of my pocket, landing on the curb with a soft clink. The men knelt, their gloved hands hovering over it. I shouted, "What do you want with it?" And the driver replied, "You'll understand when you see it open." Their eyes were cold, unblinking, and I sensed the danger of refusing. I hesitated, watching the ring spin under a street lamp, the metal catching the light like a promise broken. The decision trembled in my gut: hand it over, or keep fighting a battle I barely understood. I chose to hand it over, feeling the weight of my choices settle like ash on my shoulders. The men took the ring, and one of them placed a single, crisp photograph in my palm. A picture of Maya, smiling, with the ring on her finger. The photograph burned into my mind, and I realized the ring had never left my family. It had been a tether, a link I could not sever. I walked away, rain soaking my coat, hearing the distant sirens, and feeling a hollow ache that no words could fill. That night, I called Maya, my voice shaking, and she answered, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." The silence that followed was louder than any accusation. The fallout was a cascade of broken trust and whispered rumors. Maya confronted me in our kitchen, the tiles cold beneath our feet, and asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" I could only stare at the empty space where the ring had been, feeling the weight of my silence crushing me. Our friends began to drift, their messages growing sparse, as if they sensed a secret too heavy to carry. Jenna stopped calling at midnight, and Mark's visits became rare, his smile forced. I found myself avoiding the hallway that night, the place where the ring had slipped, fearing the echo of the past would return. The house felt hollow, each room a reminder of the choices I'd made. At work, my boss noticed my distracted stare and asked if I was all right. I replied with a thin, "Fine," but the lie tasted like metal on my tongue. Every night, the phone buzzed with unknown numbers, each message a cryptic reminder. "You can't escape the weight." I tried to block them, but the messages kept coming, each more urgent than the last. Maya's eyes grew distant, her laughter fading, and I could feel the distance between us widening like a canyon. I asked, "Do you still love me?" And she whispered, "I love you, but I don't know the you." The words hung in the air, unresolved. I began to see the ring in my dreams, a silver loop turning forever, pulling at the edges of my consciousness. I woke up drenched in sweat, the scent of incense still lingering from that first encounter. The police eventually arrived, their badge glinting under the hallway light, asking about the missing heirloom. I could not answer without exposing the truth, so I nodded and said, "I don't know." Their eyes lingered, and I sensed they were waiting for a confession I could not give. The guilt settled like a stone in my chest, each beat reminding me of the secret I'd kept, and the lives it had tangled. I felt the walls of my apartment closing in, the shadows stretching toward me. In the quiet moments, I would hear Maya's soft humming from the kitchen, a lullaby we used to share, and I wondered if the melody could ever be the same again. The quiet resolution came months later, when I found an old journal tucked behind a bookshelf, its pages yellowed, the ink smudged. I opened it to a page where my mother had written, "The ring is a reminder that some bonds cannot be broken, only understood." I read the words aloud, feeling the weight of generations settle on my shoulders. The confession felt like a release, a breath I had been holding for years. I called Maya, my voice steadier, and told her everything, how the ring had slipped, the strangers, the threats, the ledger, the night at the pier. She listened, tears forming, and said, "We'll figure it out together." The words were a promise, fragile yet hopeful. We decided to keep the ring's memory alive, not as a cursed object, but as a story we could share, a lesson in trust and honesty. We placed the empty box on our balcony, the basil growing beside it, a reminder that life continued. The night air was cool, the city lights dimming, and I felt a strange peace settle over me, as if the ring's absence had finally made space for something new. I still hear the occasional echo of that hallway knock, but now it feels like a distant memory, not a looming threat. The scar on my wrist faded, but the lesson lingered, shaping who I am. And in the silence after the story ends, I hear a single phrase that keeps looping in my mind. The ring never truly left. It only waited for me to let go.